All right, this video is going over lesson 8-7, solving trinomials by factoring when there is a leading coefficient at the very front of the equation. All right, so this is just one step different, basically, it's a little different than the last video, 8-6, when we solved trinomials with no number in front, right? So remember in the last video, we looked at the last number. We found all the factors of the last number, numbers that you can multiply together to get this number, that you can add together to get this middle number, not x, the number in front of x, right? So all of these that add up to these. When you have a leading coefficient, all we're going to do is multiply that first number times the last number. So a times c. I'll write that here, AC. Whatever number you get, you're going to find all the factors of that add up to the middle. So instead of just taking this number and finding the factors that add up to the middle, you're going to multiply first times last to get this, and then find all the factors of that add up to the middle. Okay, so we're going to do that a bunch. You're going to practice. But let's look at an example. Let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, so for this first one, factor 2x squared plus 15x plus 18. We've got this 2 in the front, so we're going to multiply 2 times 18, and we're going to get 36. And I'm just going to write it up here so I don't forget it, right? So we want to find all the factors of 36 that add up to 15, to this middle number here. So we're going to write down all the factors of 36 here. So what, 4 times 9, 6 times 6, what else? 3 times 12, 1 times 36, but obviously 1 times 36 is not going to add up to 15. So when I have these factors, I'm going to start adding, and I want to find the pair that adds up to 15. So 4 plus 9 is 13, that doesn't work. 6 plus 6 is 12, that doesn't work. 3 plus 12 is 15. Ding, ding, ding. I found one that works. So the two numbers I'm going to use are 3 and 12. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. The math is still the same. The idea is still the same. We're factoring. So we want to end up with binomials inside parentheses, but it's going to be a little different. So now instead of just plugging these two numbers in and being done with it, we're going to go back and rewrite this equation, and we're going to keep everything the same. But instead of writing 15x, we're going to separate it into two terms that when you add them together equal 15x. So we're going to separate this into 3x plus 12x because 3x plus 12x is 15x, right? So I'm going to have, I'm going to say rewrite, and I'm going to write 2x squared, and then I'm going to separate 15x into, I'll do it with this, 3x plus 12x, and then I still have this plus 18 here on the end. Okay, so now I've just taken this equation. It's still the same equation, but instead of 15x here, I've split it up. Okay, great. So now what? Now I want to factor. So I'm going to, I want to group. So I'm going to group the first two, and I'm going to group the last two. And once I group them, I'm going to try and factor each group, right? So what can I divide both of these terms by? What do they both have in common? Well, they both have an x, at least one x, right? They don't both have an x squared, but they both have at least one x. So I can divide them both by x. What about these two? What can they both be divided by? How about 6? They can both be divided by 6. Okay, so now I'm going to rewrite this. Whatever I divide by, that goes out front. And what's left over after I divide goes inside parentheses. So 2x squared divided by x is 2x. Bring down my plus sign. 3x divided by x is 3. Okay, and then I've got plus, and I put this number in front. So plus 6, and then everything left over after I divide in parentheses. 12x divided by 6 is 2x. Bring down my plus sign. 18 divided by 6 is 3. Okay, so here's the final step. What do we notice here about both of these terms? Terms are separated by plus signs. So this whole thing is a term. This whole thing is a term. What are both terms containing? This set of parentheses, right? So we're going to write that set of parentheses. We're going to write that in front. So I'm going to write 2x plus 3 times, and then I'm going to pull out the two leading coefficients and put them together. X plus 6. And I'm done. That's it. That's the final answer. Okay, so it kind of felt like a lot of steps, right? But it's not too bad. Just follow the math. Go back and rewatch that if you need to. That's the beauty of having a video here. So we're multiplying the first number times the last. Whatever you get, find all the factors that add up to the middle. So we did a little table here. We found the two numbers that worked. So normally at this point, if you don't have a number in front here, you would plug these into your two binomials here and here, and you'd be done, right? But since we have that leading coefficient, it changes things a little bit. It complicates it a little bit. So now I'm just going to rewrite this equation, but replace this with these two terms. So I rewrote the whole thing, replacing 15x with these two. Then I grouped and tried to divide out what I could. Divide out the greatest common factor. Once I did that, I brought an x out front here and a 6 out front here. So I put that 6 plus x together, and these two I put together, right? It's sort of like I took this and distributed it to each term here, right? So this is being multiplied by x, which is what I have here, and this is being multiplied by 6, which is what I have here. Okay, so whatever you have repeated, write that first, and then the leading coefficients with the sign here, write that second, and you're done. Okay, let's do another example. This one actually has a step in front, so pay attention. This is kind of an exception a little bit, right? Here, I have a number in front. However, I notice that I can actually divide all of these terms by that number in front. I can divide everything by 3, right? So once I do that, I'm going to write the 3 out front and everything left over in parentheses. 3x squared divided by 3 is just x squared. Negative 3x divided by 3 is just negative x. And negative 18 divided by 3 is negative 6. Okay, so now this is just a regular trinomial that we're factoring. So find all the factors of the last number that add up to the middle. So factors of negative 6 that add up to, this is really a negative 1, right? So I can use negative 1 and 6, negative 6 and 1, negative 2 and 3, negative 3 and 2, right? So we want to find the one that adds up to negative 1. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. There it is. There it is. Okay, so now I'm going to rewrite everything. Now, since I don't have a leading coefficient inside parentheses here, I can go ahead and just cut to writing my binomial. So I've got this number out front. So I put that in front. And then inside parentheses, I have a regular trinomial. I factored and got my two numbers. So I'm just going to write my two binomials, right? X goes here, X goes here. My numbers are negative 3 and positive 2. So I write negative 3 and positive 2. And that's my final answer. So I do all these extra steps when there is a number in front of my trinomial, right? In this case, there's a number in front of the trinomial, but I can actually get rid of it by dividing. So yes, there's still this number in front, but it's outside of parentheses. When we look inside parentheses, we've got just a plain old trinomial. So I just factor it the easy way, right? Factors of the last number that add up to the middle, find those two numbers, plop them into your binomial. And then don't forget that number that you divided out front, this 3 stays out front. Okay, so hopefully you can tell the difference. Let's do a few examples here. All right, so I'm going to go through and first of all, I don't think any of these have the shortcut where we can divide out, maybe a couple of them. But looking here, I can't divide all 3 terms by anything, so I'm going to multiply first times the last, and 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So I want to find all the factors of negative 4 that add up to negative 3. Right? So those factors would be negative 4 and positive 1. Negative, and if you have to write yourself a chart out to the side, you can. I'm just telling you it's negative 4 and positive 1. So I'm going to rewrite this 2x squared, but I'm going to replace negative 3x with negative 4x plus 1x, and then keep writing it minus 2 at the end. It does not matter what order you write these in. I could have written plus x minus 4x. Doesn't matter. I'll end up with the same answer at the very end no matter what. Okay, so now I'm going to group. So I'm going to group these first two together, the last two together. Can I factor anything out of these first two? Yeah, they can both be divided by 2x. What about this guy? Can I factor anything out? No, so I'm just going to say 1. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to put the 2x out front. Everything left over in parentheses after I divide. 2x squared divided by 2x is just x. Negative 4x divided by 2x is just negative 2. Okay, then I've got this plus sign, and then the 1 in front. Everything left over after I divide. X minus 2 divided by 1 is still x minus 2, right? So the last thing I have to do here, see this repeated part? I'm going to write that first. You can write it second too, it doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to keep it consistent. So I'm going to write this part first, x minus 2. And then I'm going to combine these two guys into their own parentheses, 2x plus 1. And I'm done. That's it. That's the answer. Not terrible, right? The more we do it, hopefully you'll catch on to the pattern. Okay, there's nothing I can divide all of these terms by, so I'm going to multiply first times the last. 16 times 1 is 16. And I want to find all the factors of 16 that add up to negative 8. So when this number is positive, but the sum is negative, that tells me both of the numbers I'm looking for have to be positive. Because have to be negative, because, thinking ahead, because a negative times a negative equals a positive number. Okay, so we're going to think of all the factors of 16 that add up to 8. That's 4 and 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 plus 4 is 8. But they both have to be negative. So that's negative 4 and negative 4. So I'm going to rewrite this as, I'll write it out here to the side, 16x squared, and then minus 4x. Minus 4x, which is, oh, I'm writing x and I should have written r. All right, well, it's the same thing. I've called it x now, so I'm done. And then plus 1 at the end. It should have been 16r squared minus 4r minus 4r. It's okay. The math will be the same. Okay, now I want to group. So I'm going to group these first two. And I'm going to group these second two. I included the negative with the 4x, but that doesn't mean that I'm now multiplying these. Think of there being like a plus sign in between here, right? I just had to keep that negative sign with the 4x, so I put the parentheses here, but that doesn't mean I'm multiplying since there's not a sign. Just think of it as a plus sign here. Okay, so now I want to factor. So what can I divide both of these by? Looks like 4x. And what can I divide both of these by? Well, remember, I want the middle to match. I want it to match. So right now, there's a minus sign in the middle, right? Over here, there's a plus sign in the middle. So is there anything I can divide by to change that plus sign to a negative? And this is negative, and I want it to be positive. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. Okay, and I'll show you what happens. So I'm going to put that number I divided by out front, 4x, and then everything left over after I divide in parentheses. 16 divided by 4 is 4. X squared divided by x is x. Bring down my minus sign. 4x divided by 4x is just 1. Okay, then I have this negative 1, so I'm going to put that in front. Negative 1, and everything left over after I divide. Negative 4x divided by negative 1 is 4x. 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. Okay, so now you can see that what's left over inside parentheses matches. We want it to match. That's the goal. We want it to match. So now I'm going to write it first. And then I'm going to combine the two leading coefficients into their own. And you'll see that this is kind of a special case in itself because it's the same binomial and it's actually just squared. But we'll get into a shortcut how to solve that in the next lesson. All right, number 5. I know there's a lot of examples and these videos are really long, but I'm hoping that it's helpful for you guys to see examples over and over, okay? No excuse not to watch them, right? All right, so I've got a 3, a 2, and a -8. I can't divide everything by the same number, so I'm going to multiply first times the last. 3 times -8 is -24. I'm going to write it out here to the side. So I want to find all the factors of -24 that add up to 2, right? And you might have to make yourself a little chart out to the side. That's fine. The numbers that I'm going to use are 12 and -2. 12 and -2. 12 times -2 is -24. 12 minus 2. Hold on. Oh, I'm going to use, sorry, the numbers I'm going to use are +6 and -4. +6 and -4. So I'm going to have 3x squared plus 6x minus 4x, because that is still equal to +2x, and then minus 8, right? So this is the same thing as this. Okay, I've just separated out this middle term into 2 terms. Now I want to group, so I'm going to group these guys and these guys, and remember there's really a little plus sign in between here. And I can divide this first group by 3x, and I can divide this side by 4, but I also want to change my signs, so I'm going to divide by -4. So then I rewrite this in front. So what I divide by goes in front, 3x, and everything left over after I divide goes in parentheses. 3x squared divided by 3x is x. 6x divided by 3x is 2. Then I've got this -4. And then -4x divided by -4 is just x. -8 divided by -4 is +2. Okay, so now we've got our parentheses matching. So I want to rewrite that in front. And then I'm going to bring those 2 leading coefficients together and put them in their own parentheses. Right? Making sense? Kind of. So far, so good. I hope. I know it's a lot of steps. Let's do a few more. All right, number 7. Can't divide everything. So I'm going to multiply first number times the last, and I get 6. So the factors of 6 that add up to 5 are 2 and 3. So I'm going to rewrite it. I'll write it out here to the side to give myself some more room. 2a squared plus 3a plus 2a, or I'll say plus 2a plus 3a, and then plus 3 on the end. It really does not matter which order you write this in. And if this video wasn't already so long, I would show you how we get the exact same answer, whether I do it this way or flip these two. You end up with the same answer at the end, so don't worry about what order you write them in. Okay, so now I want to group these two. I can divide these terms by 2a, and I can divide these terms by 3. So now I want to do that, so I'm going to write the number I divided by in front, 2a, and everything left over when I divide in parentheses. A plus 2a divided by a is just 1. And then here I've got a pop plus 3. And everything left over after I divide, 3a divided by 3 is a. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay, so you can see that my parentheses match. So now I'm going to rewrite them in front. A plus 1. And I'm going to pull these 2 terms over. 2a plus 3. And that's my answer. I'm done. A lot of busy work, right? A lot of tedious little steps. Okay, 2 more, and then we're done with this first part, and then we're going to add something to it. So the video is going to keep going, but we're almost done. All right, here, can I divide all of these terms by anything? Yes, I can divide everything by 4. So I want to do that first. Why would I deal with big numbers when I could get rid of those big numbers, right? So that's going to become, 4 is going to be out front. Every time you divide, you got to put that number in front. And then I'm going to be left with 2x squared minus x minus 6. Okay, so here's the new trinomial. I'm going to ignore this 4 for a second. It's part of my final answer, so I need to make sure it's in the final answer, but I'm not using it for anything since it's outside parentheses. I'm just going to focus on this trinomial in here for a minute, okay? So 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. I want to find all the factors of negative 12 that add up to negative 1, because that's my middle term here, negative 1, okay? So the factors of negative 12 that add up to negative 1 are negative 4 and positive 3, right? So I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. I'm going to write 4 times, and then I'm going to write 2x squared minus 4x plus 3x, because that equals negative 1x, and then negative 6 at the end. And now I can group and just finish solving like I know how to do, right? So I can group these two and divide by 2x, and I can group these two and divide by 3. Okay, so I still have that 4 out front. I don't want to forget about it. So then inside here, I write 2x in front, and then everything left over after I divide in parentheses. 2x squared divided by 2x is just x. Negative 4x divided by 2x is negative 2. And then I've got plus 3. Everything left over after I divide. 3x divided by 3 is x. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. So now I can see that my parentheses match. If they don't match, which they might not, we're going to get to an example in a second. If they don't match, we're going to call it a prime equation, a prime trinomial, and it means there isn't anything we can factor out, that it's already in simplest form. Right? So far we haven't dealt with that. We've always been able to get them to match. But if you're solving and they don't match, first of all, I would go back and double check my math. And then second of all, if you're stuck and you're sure you did it right, then you're correct. And the answer is called prime. And the next problem we're going to do is that. Okay, so last thing here, I've got 4 on the outside. I'm going to combine these two and write them in front here. X minus 2. And then I'm going to put these two together and write 2x plus 3. And that's my final answer. And then if I were going to multiply this by 4, and then my new binomial, if I multiplied, foiled this or whatever, I should end up with this equation right here. Okay, last problem here on the front, number 17. Okay, so I've got 2, negative 14, and 18. Oh, sorry. So I can divide everything by 2. So I'm going to do that first, right? And rewrite it. So I write the 2 out front. 2a squared divided by 2 is a squared. Negative 14a divided by 2 is negative 7. And 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now here's where it gets interesting, right? So we're going to ignore this 2 for a second. Gosh, my fingers are ugly. Never care about my fingers until I see them on the camera. We're going to ignore this 2 for a second. And we're just going to focus on the trinomial. So there's no number in front. So I'm just going to take all the factors of this guy that add up to negative 7. However, what are the factors of 9? 1, 9, 3, and 3, right? That's it. Is there any way that I can make 1 and 9 equal 7? Or 3 and 3 equal 7? Nope, I can get 8 and I can get 6, but I cannot get 7. So there is nothing I can do to factor this. So I'm done. I can bring out this 2 and that's it. I cannot factor this anymore. So we're just going to say this is prime when I cannot factor it. All right, now let's work on solving. All right, so to solve, we're basically factoring just like we did. That's why we did that whole first part of the video. And then we're going to set everything equal to 0, and we're going to use our zero product property, right? We're going to factor and use the zero product property, which just means that when we have terms being multiplied and they equal 0, the product is 0, that means one of the terms has to, at least one, if not both, have to be equal to 0. All right, so there's an example up here that just shows you want to make sure that you get everything on one side of the equal sign, 0 on the other side. That's what they did right here in this step. All right, they went ahead and factored, so that's a long process. They just wrote the answer here. You shouldn't be able to do this so quick, right? It's going to take you some steps. From here to here, they factored and they set it equal to 0. So then we take this guy and set it equal to 0. And we take this guy and set it equal to 0, and we solve both, right? This guy equal to 0, and this guy equal to 0. So you're going to have two answers, this guy or this guy. X can be either one. Either one of those is the solution to this equation. Either one will give you an answer of 0, or at least will make both of these equal if you were to plug them back in. Okay, so that's where we're at. Let's just jump right in. We got a factor. It's going to be a little bit more work here, right? We got a factor and then set equal to 0. Okay, so 8 times -3, -24. I want to find all the factors of -24 that add up to 2, right? So I'm going to use +6 and -4. So we're going to rewrite this. 8x squared plus 6x minus 4x. This is just this. Minus 3, but now it's equal to 0. We're going to factor it exactly the same, but we're going to set it equal to 0 eventually. Okay, so here I want to group. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2x. I'm going to divide both of these by -1. Okay, so I'm going to write 2x out front. Everything left over after I divide. 8x squared divided by 2x is 4x. 6x divided by 2x is 3. And then I'm going to put this -1 in front. And everything left over after I divide. -4x divided by -1 is +4x. -3 divided by -1 is +3. And that's equal to 0. And then my parentheses match, right? Just like we did in the front, we're still factoring. We haven't started that extra solving step yet. So I'm going to rewrite this, the repeated part first, 4x plus 3. And then I'm going to pull out those leading coefficients and put them together. 2x minus 1, and all that's equal to 0. So now we're here to this step, and all we're going to do is set each parentheses equal to 0. So we've got 4x plus 3 equals 0, and 2x minus 1 equals 0. And then that's just algebra, right? Here to get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 3, and then I'm going to divide by 4. So my answer is actually going to be a fraction, -3 over 4. And here I'm going to add 1 and then divide by 2, so my answer will be 1 over 2, right? And they actually want you to write your solution, and you need to know how to write your solution with the squiggles around it, right? The solution set, I guess you could say. So here, I'll write it up here. You're going to write the little squiggles, and we will write -3/4, +1/2, squiggles. I don't care if you write it that way for me. I don't care, but if you see it on an EOC, just know that's how you're supposed to write it. I don't care if you just find the math and give me a little or right there and maybe circle your answer because you'll have a lot of work and I have to dig through it. That's fantastic. As long as you do the math right, that's okay. I don't care about this standard set. Okay, next one. All right, we're going to multiply first number times the last number. So 3 times -5 is -15. The factors of -15 that add up to -2 are -5 and +3. I'm going to rewrite this here. 3n squared. I'm going to write +3n minus 5n. That together is equal to -2n. -5 equals 0. Okay, so far so good. Then I want to group them. First two, last two. These first two I can divide by 3n. These second two I can divide by -5. Okay, so then I'm going to rewrite that. I'm going to write 3n in front. And everything left over after I divide. 3n squared divided by 3n is n. 3n divided by 3n is 1. When you divide something by itself, it's always 1. Then I put this -5 out front. And everything left over after I divide. -5n divided by -5 is n. -5 divided by -5 is +1. And that's equal to 0. And then you can see my parentheses match. Fantastic. So I'm going to rewrite that in front. Since both terms contain that, I'm going to pull that out. And then I'm going to pull these two leading coefficients and put them second. And set that equal to 0. Okay, now I just take each parentheses, set it equal to 0, and solve. So n plus 1 equals 0. N has to equal -1. Or 3n minus 5 equals 0. Add 5 to both sides, divide by 3, n equals 5/3. Done. Okay, got 3 more examples and a word problem. Not too terrible, right? Sorry, I kind of wrote over this one. For this one, this is not in the correct form. Remember, we have to get 0 on one side of the equal sign. So I'm going to add 21p to both sides, and I'll cancel here and come over here. And then I'm going to add 40 to both sides. So 2p squared plus 21p plus 40 equals 0. Now I can't divide everything by any one number, so I got to multiply first times the last, and I get 80. And I want to find all the factors of 80 that add up to 21. So I believe, I wrote it down earlier, I get 5 and 16. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2p squared plus 5p plus 16p plus 40 equals 0. And then I can group. I can divide both of these by p. I can divide both of these by 8 and then rewrite that. So I'm going to have p out front. 2p squared divided by p is 2p. 5p divided by p is 5. Put that plus 8 in front here. 16p divided by 8 is 2p. 40 divided by 8 is positive 5 equals 0. Both of my parentheses match. Awesome, that's what I want. They don't match, just go back and retry. And so I'm going to write 2p plus 5 in front, and then the p plus 8 I'm going to write next to it equals 0. So then when I set this equal to 0, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides and then divide by 2. So I'll get p equals negative 5 over 2. And for this one, I'm just going to subtract 8 from both sides, and p equals negative 8. I'm running out of room and out of time, so I'm not showing the work for that, but do make sure you show all your work. Okay, number 10. 12x squared minus 15 equals negative 8x. I want to get 0 here, so I'm going to add 8x. 12x squared plus 8x minus 15 equals 0. When I multiply 12 times negative 15, I get negative 180. And then the factors of negative 180 that add up to 8 are 18 and negative 10. Sorry, 18 and negative 10. So I'm going to rewrite that over here. 12x squared minus 10x plus 18x, and then I have a minus 15 here at the end. And that's all equal to 0. I'm squishing it in. So here's my new equation. And then I'm going to group the first two terms. And I can divide both of these by 2x. And I'm going to group the second two terms. And I can divide both of those by 3. And that's it. So now I can rewrite this. I'm going to pull the 2x out front. I'm going to move over here. And everything left over after I divide in parentheses, 12x squared divided by 2x is 6x. Negative 10x divided by 2x is negative 5. Then I've got this plus 3 over here, and I can't see it. So I'm going to put plus 3 next. And everything left over after I divide. 18x divided by 3x is 6x. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. And of course, all of that is still equal to 0. So this is where I'm at now. Right here, both of my parentheses match, so that's great. That's what I want. Are y'all sick of hearing me say that? I'm sick of saying it. All right, so then I put that in front, 6x minus 5. And then I pull out my leading coefficients and write them next. 2x plus 3. Oh, my dog's barking. And I'm going to set each of these equal to 0, right? So 6x minus 5 equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. This is what I'm doing every time. I just haven't been writing it out. So add 5 to both sides and then divide by 6. X equals 5, 6. There's a squirrel. Never fear, we're all good. Minus 3 from both sides, and then divide by 2. So x equals negative 3 over 2. Okay, one more. All right, I've got this long guy. I got to rewrite him so that everything's on one side of the equal sign, nothing on the other. So I've got 3b squared. I've got negative 18b and positive 10b. I want to get rid of this, so minus 10b from both sides. That's going to make this negative 28b, and it makes this side go away. And then I've got this minus 49 here. I want to make it go away, so I'm going to add 49 to both sides. And that's equal to 0 now, because I got rid of everything on the right-hand side. Okay, is there anything I can divide all this by now? Nope, sure can't. So I have to multiply first times the last, and I get 147. 147. So the factors of 147 that add up to negative 28 are negative 21 and negative 7. I'm kind of shortcutting it. I know you need to take the time to figure that out. It's not going to come that quick. You might have to write out a chart just for the sake of time in the video. I'm telling you, negative 21 and negative 7. So 3b squared minus 21b minus 7b plus 49 equals 0. Okay, then I want to group first two and the last two, and I can divide the first two by 3b. Again, I can divide these two by, I want to change my sign, so I'm going to make it a negative number, and I can divide both by 7. Okay, so I'm going to put 3b in front. Everything after I divide, 3b squared divided by 3b is b. Bring down my minus sign. 21b divided by 3b is 7. And I'm going to bring over this minus 7. And then negative 7b divided by negative 7 is just b. 49 divided by negative 7 is negative 7. And that's equal to 0. Okay, my parentheses match. Fantastic. If they don't, go back and check your math, and it might just be a prime number if all your math is correct, so don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite b minus 7, and then pull out the leading coefficients, which are 3b and minus 7. And that's all equal to 0. So I set each parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So b minus 7 equals 0. b would equal 7. Or 3b minus 7 equals 0. So I would add 7 to both sides and then divide by 3. b equals 7/3. Okay, so there's the solution to that one. Yes, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and we're getting down to the end here, and I still have a lot to teach you guys, so we're cramming in a lot of information. It's all related, and if it clicks, it should be easier for you guys. If it's not clicking, it's gonna feel like a lot of work, and all I can tell you is don't skip videos. As boring as my voice gets, I get it, it's math. Listen, I've about fallen asleep making some of these videos. I get it. But it's really important you at least see and hear the information, okay? Last problem, word problem. Geometry, the length of a Charlotte, North Carolina conservatory garden is 20 yards greater than its width. The area is 300 square yards. What are the dimensions? Okay, so we've got length and width. The length equals the width plus 20. And then we've got the width. We don't know what that is, but we know length times width is 300. Right? That's what we know. So we're trying to solve for the length and the width. So if length times width is 300, the length is this. So W plus 20 times the width equals 300. That's what we're working with right now. Okay, so then I can distribute this W, and I get W squared plus 20W equals 300. This is going to be a quadratic equation, so I want to get everything on the left and a 0 on the right, so I'm going to subtract 300. And now I want to, there's no number in front here, so this is the easy way to factor. I want to find all the factors of negative 300 that add up to positive 20. And I'll just go ahead and tell you it's going to be negative 10 and positive 30. Negative 10 and positive 30. So I'm going to oh, that's my two answers, sorry. So W minus 10 and W plus 30. equals 0. Now, normally we have two answers here. However, this is a word problem. So both answers aren't going to make sense. Our answers are representing the length of a garden, right? So I can't have a negative value. So here, W is either going to equal 10 if we set this equal to 0, or if we set this equal to 0, it's going to equal negative 30. But can the width of a garden be negative 30? No. So 10 is our answer. So if we know the width is 10, width equals 10 yards, and the length, it told us, is 20 yards greater than the width. The width is 10. What's 10 plus 20? 30 yards. So that's my solution. So yes, we would get two answers down here, but with it being a word problem and it relates to size, we can't use a negative value. All right, I hope that helps. Take your time on the assignment and let me know if you have questions.